Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of Breaking the Ceiling. My name is Ashwin Bhadri. I'm going to be a host for the day. Today we are going to be talking about somebody who's created a rage in the industry. I'm talking about none other than the founder and CEO of Rage Coffee, Bharat Sethi. Hey Bharat, welcome to Breaking the Ceiling.
Hi, Ashwin. Thank you for having me.
So, Bharat, the product you've created has been a rage in the market. But before we touch upon Rage Coffee, tell us a little bit about your life before.
Oh, as long as I know, I've been an entrepreneur. So I started very early in my life, the entrepreneurship journey. In fact, I was very fascinated with just starting up, even when I was in school. And this is 2000, the early 2000s, right? So because maybe it's a family influence, it's something to do with what I saw. Maybe at school I was a through and through leader. I captained my school football team. I played under 14 Delhi. I was the head boy of the school. I was also academically bright, which was a curse later on because I had to leave football for studying, which did not make any sense to me at that time. But overall, I think just as I graduated from school, as a rather left school, and I was trying to basically figure out what to do with my life. I ended up taking economics honors, went to University of Delhi, and and I realized that I don't want to study anymore. Like it's not interesting to me to sit in a classroom and study. I hardly went to college. Mostly just, and this is 2008 to 11. Like Flipkart had come in. There was a lot of conversation, banter about e-commerce. To me, it seemed like that is my calling because I don't know, just the power of selling online was so fascinating to me that it made a lot of sense. And I wanted to explore it. So that's what I did. 3 years I was learning affiliate marketing, blogging, content writing, how to, how does SEO work? How does, how does all of these, basically, one second, my call, when I get a call, my system shows up on my system. Sorry. So, so how does, SEO works? How does affiliate marketing work? So all of these very little nuances of digital marketing, which are actually the foundation of how you sell anything online. So right out of college, I started up, and 2011, I started my first direct to consumer brand. Even at that time, because it was essentially a marketplace for artists and designers to come and collaborate together, and then we built a back end of just in time manufacturing, so we did not hold any inventory. And it was a good, fun, very, very exhilarating journey of 4 years. I exited that company. Did I think we built a very strong brand presence. We were targeting to the 16 to 25 year olds about a decade back. So learned the ropes of everything that one needs to do online. I did not have any formal training in it, so I was learning on the job every day. मतलब बिजनेस क्या होता है मतलब पता नहीं था स्टार्टअप क्या होता है कुछ नहीं पता था इट वाज ऑल अबाउट जस्ट गोइंग आउट एंड लर्निंग एंड दैट्स व्हाट हैपेंड एंड इट वाज द जर्नी वाज I was very young, but that journey was very I think thought provoking for me, but how I should take it from here, at that time. So then I started another B2B commerce company, which did not do that well, which did not take off the way my first company did, because first one was a passion project. The next one was a calculated, like this market is there, let's go after this market and let's figure out. So there was no passion in that. I think I ran for about 18 odd months, but we never achieved product market fit there. So, but I made a lot of mistakes, and there were many learnings that I took from that business, right? What not to do. So, so that's my journey before Rage in 2018 is when the company was formed, and Rage was commercially started selling. We started selling commercially in January of 2019. So 1 year I took to just go back to the basics, go back to the drawing board, and just figure out what I truly wanted to do.
So one thing that I must appreciate about you, Bharat, is you talk very openly about your failures. Very very few people do, right? So even me, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have started 15 businesses, but I have shut down six of them. And I'm very open about it, right? I've sold off a couple of them, but I've shut down 6. And it's the lessons I've learned from the failures have actually helped me make the other ones which are there right now a lot more successful, right? So even within the company, we have this practice, whenever there's a failure, and we have a lot of failures by the way, because we try a lot of new things, we never call it a failure, we call it a learning. Right? To a point where we've started this new thing of asking teammates, hey, what have you failed at this week? And it's making failure literally a part of your journey. It's not so. Another thing that we've coined internally is fail forward fast, right? So like make your mistakes quickly so we can reach, let it be a product market fit or let it be whatever we're trying to do, let's get there quickly. So I really appreciate you sharing your failure in between. So how did you come up with the idea of Rage?
To be honest with you, it was a very systematic approach. There was passion, and it started there. But then we, found out a lot of gaps in the market. So we did a lot of primary research. I, talked to a lot of customers. I spoke to the trade network, the distributors, the wholesalers, and then I also spoke to the manufacturing setup, right? The supply chain people who were from the source, how it was traveling. So I think overall what really did it for me was that there were many gaps in the market basically. So there was not just this one gap that I can go after and I will build defensibility, but there were gaps in ingredients, sourcing, manufacturing techniques. It's definitely about distribution, right? Because earlier the legacy players had the power of distribution, and that's how they sold the product. They were necessarily not selling good products or quality products, but they had shelf space. So whatever they put on the shelf, it had to sell. Some would do well, some would not do that well, but it will sell. And that I was seeing that changing very rapidly during my entrepreneurship, right? I mean, with the penetration of e-commerce and just generally consumer behavior changing, right? This last decade, majority of our population is between 18 to 35, right? So this consumer has evolved, but the products that were given to them had not evolved. This is the same consumer who was traveling abroad, was traveling, was spending a lot more on their wishes and a lot more on their, interest, but they did not have the right product. So I think that was mostly, where I found coffee to be like an empty blank canvas. Although it is, as you would know, like it's, competitive, right? But to me, it was an opportunity, right? Because there were some nuances in this competition which were completely ignored, which had a lot of weight. Like if you could crack those nuances, you would build something which was of far more value than doing something in a smaller market, in which there was little to no competition. So that's how my approach was.
So I like the very methodical way of going about it. Many people are like, I just was my passion and I started it, which is good. But if you apply a little bit of science behind it, it can go a long way, right? So it's a more calculated bet. So how did you get the name Rage?
I think, 2-3 things. One was, I think, just the idea that we'd created something which was fundamentally differentiated. And we could not have been a cafe, this thing, or I don't know, something that people were already used to. So it started with having a different name, and then it also started with different branding, right? Different communication and different identity, which did not exist in the market before, which would give us the immediate GTM leverage. The name Rage was, I think, simply because, first of all, if you study the history of brand, right? So it's a 4-letter word. It's simple, it's relatable, people know it, but they do not associate with coffee. Before Rage Coffee, they never associated with Rage Coffee, right? It's like Pangolin, right? Or all these big brands, right? Apple, nobody could associate technology and Apple, and then it sticks to you. So I think one of the cornerstones of branding is to beautifully surprise the customer so that they don't forget you, like a good surprise. You never forget a good surprise, right? So and then it was also like, trendy. It meant on point. It also, for the Gen Z and the millennials, it also means cutting edge. So some of the things like we used to hear was still here. I mean, it's become more common now, but 4 or 5 years back, like, bro, you raging, like, it's got to be like there's some sense of, this aspirational value attached to it. It's like, what's up, rager, things like these. So, and I was listening to this and I was thinking, like, this is the consumer, right? And this is the language they speak. And this is the guy who's going to spend 10 years from now on coffee. And this guy will continue to spend on coffee, right? So, rather than somebody who's already 40 years old, who's already not going to, who's already decided that they'll not spend 15 rupees more. Now we cater to that customer because now we are a more massy brand that ways. I mean, our reach is far more now, but that was the idea. That was the initial idea.
So, how do you manage innovation as an entrepreneur? How do you think of innovation? How do you kind of structure it? Is it something you do once in a month, once in a year? Do you do it as a team? How do you handle innovation?
Innovation is a very interesting, word to me because I think it is the DNA of somebody, of a business, of a person. Without innovation, I think companies like ours would not exist even for a month. It is so much going on, right? In today's market, brand awareness is, high, but brand loyalty is so low. It becomes extremely difficult to stay in this market without being ahead of the curve, which basically means you innovate. Now, innovation is not just, to me, is not just what you can see as a customer or an audience, it's in the back end. Most innovation that would happen is in the thinking, how you think about a category and how you're applying that thinking to your set of products. It's in the team culture. It's in your operation excellence. How are you making sure that your business is always in the back end from an operational point of view, either through technology or through unique processes, becomes innovative. So I think to me it's a DNA. When it's your DNA, it's a living being inside of somebody. So it stays with you throughout your every day, every moment. I think if you think about business, you have to think about what's future.
So I loved how you said innovation should become the DNA of the company, right? It's not something that is forced upon people. It's something that people should want to do because they want to do it, not because the big boss is saying, innovate karo, to innovate karo, right? So give me an example of an innovation that did really well. And also, if you're okay with sharing, give me an example of an innovation that did not do as well as you thought.
Innovation that went well, I will tell you something that is not very maybe, generally, people associate innovation with maybe a product, right? So let me think of something that, would be a more back-end kind of an innovation we did. So I'll tell you, with operations, right? E-commerce is a lot about your operational excellence, right? Because that's your bottom line in e-commerce, because there are returns sometimes, and then there is a lot of customer calling that you have to do, for example, for COD. Then there is all these softwares you have to use for warehousing, and you have to build your warehousing either through in-house or through outsource it, so on and so forth, right? So there's a lot of operational work in e-commerce at scale, right? So what we did was we decided to create like custom software when we started the company. We did not, so we had several tools, right, available, but we said we will make something that is core to us, which is the production, which is inventory, because we decided to do manufacturing ourselves. So production, inventory management, and then the entire dispatch and order management. And then now we've built on that tool, which is, it's like if you had to sell that software, it would be, anybody would pay us like lots of, it's a full-blown beast in itself, right? Especially for omni-channel. So we did that from day zero, which I have not heard that most people do it when they're zero. आज करता है कोई तो वो possible होता, but we did that. So I think that was an innovation that worked really well for us, because that we were able to control so much with it. It's a simple thing, but we are able to build so much efficiency for the customer there. the entire experience of delivery, dispatch, emails, WhatsApp, whatever like the customer is going through. I think we just and then internally how we're able to have a better bottom line because of management of better operations. So that was something that worked well. Something that didn't work well, I think just I'll tell you very honestly and frankly that India has been from a manufacturing standpoint, from a ecosystem standpoint, right? India has been growing phenomenally, right? But we're still lacking compared to compared to China in terms of the processes and in terms of the scale we have in some categories. So we decided to when during COVID, right? And I am a full this thing on focusing on Indian products, right? So we don't want to use anything that's coming out of India, and even though it should benefit the individual. We don't want to do direct imports or something. So we created this basically this unique concept jar, which we wanted to launch, and we decided we'll not go to outside of India to get the design and the manufacturing done. We'll do it all in-house, and all the molds and the production and the entire rendering 3D designs of this. We'll do it all in-house. So I think we have spent a lot of time trying to do that, but we're still not able to do that. So I think that is maybe it's not gone wrong yet. We are closer to achieving it, but it's massively delayed. So I think definitely because we're trying to be also doing something in India gives us a lot of comfort, right? Because of scale, because of what if there is another lockdown or a COVID breakout or whatever, right? Nobody knows in the times we're living. So we just feel that it's maybe delayed, but it is in long term it's going to be a better decision. But I feel like just depending on on one factory and one kind of chain there did not work very well for us.
So I remember you launching something like a cryptocurrency. Was that a marketing thing? Tell me a little bit more about that. I remember some kind of a coin getting launched. Give me a little bit about that.
It was pure marketing, for lack of a better word, it was a pure marketing gimmick. And what it really helped us is like in reaching out to the audience and talking their language. And when I say gimmick, I think also because that there was no coin. In fact, it was a game. It was a game to collect coins because it created a lot of buzz, and we got a very strong traction on even the game. It was an IG filter basically. I mean, you could play the game on an IG filter. So it was quite interesting actually. I mean, and that's about it. It was a month-long campaign, drove what we really intended it to drive for us.
So tell me about productivity. What do you as an entrepreneur do? Give me maybe two things that you do that make you more productive than some other people.
Oh man, this can be really long, but I'll try to be as this thing as possible. So one thing is obviously I spend a lot of time before hitting work. Like I wake up very early, about 6:30, 7. I'm on a bad day, maybe around 8 o'clock. But before 8 and before I start working, I do a lot of just physical exercise, clearing my mind out, just maybe thinking about things that are critical that day, preparing myself for those things. Spend time with family, just listen to music early in the morning. Just spend that time away from the screen and doing things that I used to do as a child. Enjoying just being random. I think just being creative, without trying too hard to achieve a goal, because it's my comfort zone, and that's one thing that has worked for me, and I've been doing it for some time now. Quite during COVID, I started this because pre-COVID I used to wake up and start working, and that I did for 9 years, right? And I used to wake up and start working. Where's my phone? Where's the email? Where's this? And my laptop was always next to me, right? And I was, and it during COVID I realized, oh wow, Now there are no emails to answer. What to do? What to do? So that is one thing. The second is, with people and with most of, business is all about people, right? So I think just building the right culture is very, very paramount for me. We are a very large team now, so we have to make sure that everything we're doing is, we're benefiting these people, right? Making the right, we're setting the right benchmark for them. We're adding value to their lives personally, professionally, and that to me is very powerful as well, because then people go out of their way to, also give back. Uh, so just generally thinking about people and how I can maybe add value to their day to somehow, right? Maybe even by just an email, for example, or something like that. So that's just the second thing I can tell you. And it takes a lot from you. It's very difficult to do this consistently. Somebody can do it for maybe a week, 2 weeks, but to do this consistently is a habit, and then you have to start enjoying this habit basically. Otherwise, it's not going to be very fruitful, I feel. The third one is, I think, no meetings till I get done with my critical work, with my important work. So I don't have any meetings till about 3, 2:33. I don't have any meetings, and mostly will spend that time on things which I have to do, or I have to wear on the thinking cap for those things. And another good hack I can tell you is I don't pick up any unknown calls. That's so important. Like, if my phone rings, at least, I'm talking to you right now. I have to put my phone on this thing, on airplane mode, because I cannot talk otherwise. So just not picking up random numbers, and then even WhatsApp, making sure that everything is sorted. It's always clean, inbox is clean. So I think just being productive, I think those are the things I do. And meetings are very short, right? So my meetings can last anywhere between 5 to 25 minutes. 30 minutes is like really long meeting for me. And 1 hour meeting is something has broken, something catastrophic has happened.
So you mentioned something which I'm going to take a lot of inspiration from, which is, hey, no meetings till I finish my work. So the other day I was, so over the last 2 years since the pandemic began, I run my day in these 30-minute blocks. Right? They start at 9 and they go until about 7:30. And I was very happy. I'm like, my whole week is planned. I know exactly, I don't have to think about what's next. And I was so proud of that, right? And was actually working quite efficiently. So one day I showed this to one of my mentors, right? Who just sold $1 billion company, right? So he's one of my mentors and an investor. And I just showed him my calendar. For something, you're saying something, when my screen was shared, my calendar kind of came up. And he was like, one second, what is that? I'm like, oh, that's my calendar. And I'm very proud. Like, oh, look at it. It was so color coded, and it's very, like, you can see the customer calls, review, deep dives, all, nicely color coded. He's like, oh, this is fantastic. He's like, Ashwin, when do you think?
Yeah.
I was like, holy crap. I'm like, you're right. He's like, when do you think? Your entire day is spent with people. It's spent with your teammates, it's spent with customers, your investor calls. Like, where is your thinking time? Like, I'm like, you know what? I was trying to justify it by saying, oh, I think with my team. He's like, all that's great. But he's like, you need time to think, because you have to set the vision. Your team will innovate, but they will innovate in the direction of the vision. So you have to set the vision and get those building blocks right. But that literally changed the way I operate my calendar. Now I've kind of restructured my calendar a little bit. I'm now clearing more zones out, reducing few of the meetings. Do I need to meet this team every day? I'm kind of lowering, taking it out. I like the fact that you said that, hey, I don't do anything. I don't know if I can do it till 3 o'clock. Maybe I'm going to try and do it till lunch. Like till lunch, no meetings. Then I can jump into meetings. I'm going to take inspiration from it. So tell me a little bit about the culture that you've set at Rage. What is the culture like? How do you define culture, first of all, and how have you set it at Rage?
I think culture is a sum of all the subcultures in the company, because in our setup it's a little different. I'll tell you how. We have operations which employs a certain different kind of people. Then there is sales, which employs a certain different kind of mindset. Marketing is different in today's time, all the more different. And then we have the corporate stuff, right? So branding, design, and all of that, right? And then we have obviously the customer support and the customer team, which need a very different treatment. So getting everybody to be on the same page is difficult. Like everybody cannot be at the same frequency, and that's the acceptance we have to have in our business. What we try to achieve is that we hire people who believe in the same foundational values like us, and that's about it. Like it's not about work. Most interviews about work end in 15 minutes. And then I think I would spend maybe hours sometimes, and in some cases I've also spent years in hiring. there are 2-3 people in the company who are phenomenal, right? And I took time, like almost a year in both cases, in all those 2 or 3 cases where I kept talking to them. I kept talking to them, right? And it really helps. So first of all, the culture is about hiring slowly and hiring the right person. So 99% of this thing should be done. Of the confidence should be before hiring itself. That 1% is about action and execution, but that 99% should be. If you're not 99% convinced, we try not to proceed in most cases unless there is a very, very urgent need. So that's it. The second thing, the cornerstones of our culture are, I think, which I keep telling also, right? As you also mentioned about mistakes, right? So the first is speed. We need a lot of speed, and we need thinkers, and we need people who believe in speed, right? The second is agility. So it's okay to fail. It's okay to maneuver. It's okay to not keep doing what you intended to do, but change gears, but do that quickly. So be agile. And the third is ethics. I think the most important thing is just be a good person. I say this to everyone: just be a good person, right? It's so understated today. It is of not given enough value. But if you are just enough, you're just a good person, you will be ethically strong, you will be resilient, and you will also think for the larger good, which is the team. And that's where most of the problems arise. And security and confidentiality is a big part of the way the culture is. Like data confidentiality, customer confidentiality. I mean, at least when somebody joins us, they have to sign at least, I think, 7 or 8 documents around just this. There's an email policy that, because I'm too finicky about this. So personally, it's something very personal to me also. I don't want that to, somebody misusing the data or just not having enough. Because I've seen organizations, customers' data is moving from one department, one person to another. And in today's time, it's such a huge problem. So those are the 3-4 things, and the culture is built around these things.
So what is an interesting question that you may ask during an interview that would be different than, because see, most of the questions are, where do you see yourself 5 years from now, and tell us about the job role. Tell me something that you ask different that is not, that you think is not asked by everyone else.
I think I've seen my HR team maybe smirk sometimes when I ask this question, but I think also I've seen some candidates maybe taken a little bit aback when I ask this question, which is, do you have friends, right? If somebody says yes, or somebody says, ek do hai, somebody would say, nobody says no, right? And then say, okay, tell me, so if you have friends, okay, so tell me about your friends, which is like, maybe sometimes I ask them, sometimes I don't ask. But the second question is, how would your friends describe you? And I think that's a question where most people find difficulty in answering, because what people perceive themselves to be, sometimes they are not. And that is the problem in hiring. And that is the problem that also we have made mistakes on, where we believe the person on face value, right? Wherein what we really want to see is how they think, their friends think about them. And we get some fantastic responses.
I love that. I'm going to steal that one. Like today, I have an interview later in the day. I'm going to literally steal that one, and I'm going to test out how that plays out, right? Because I keep changing up questions. There are a couple of questions that we'll always ask, but I always try and change it up. I'm bringing this one in the mix. Tell me your thoughts about food companies raising funding. What do you think about that?
I think It's great. I mean, why not? Because I think there is, and it's always been happening. Really, if you look at it, food technology is one area, right, wherein you can call the cloud kitchens today, or the aggregators, or the listings, or discovery business. But overall, if you look at the last 30, 40 years, investments in food have been a majority of the taken a majority of the space in the private equity markets, right? So, food investments have always been there, just that they were mostly in late stage when the company had established or the company had proved themselves, right? So, with the technology as a disruptor, right, with direct to consumer coming in, with the applications and the entire penetration online, what has happened is there is also a lot of room for investors to look at these companies, vis-a-vis technology companies, and in a country like India where consumption is going to double, right, in 5 years, now in 3-4 years, right? So I mean, what opportunity there is for investors, because lots of spaces are completely blank canvases. So I think if an investor can enter early in a good company, they can make 20x, 10x. I mean, we have given returns to our angels which go beyond 20, 25x. So I mean, it's definitely worth it because the adoption is increasing faster now. But as I mentioned, it's very difficult. It's extremely difficult to build a brand of very high salience. It's one thing to start and do some noise, make some noise, but it is extremely difficult to build something that is truly loved and sits right in the top three in the category. So that is where we'll see something that have not played out yet, but we'll see that in the future how that plays out.
What would you focus on first? Would you focus on scale or would you focus on profitability? Like become profitable and then scale slowly, or try and scale quickly, even if you're burning a little money, it's fine. But what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, honestly, it depends on the entrepreneur. It depends on the aspirations and needs of an entrepreneur. When I started my first business, I ran away from raising capital because my idea was घर पैसा आ रहा है, मेरे को कुछ नहीं करना है, मेरे को फंडिंग नहीं चाहिए, मेरे को फंडिंग मेरे I am happy to run my own ship. I don't want to raise money, and that was my fundamental idea there. And then I realized my learnings in the last 12 years, in the last decade or so, has been that if you want to do something, significant and impactful in a short period of time, you have to have a significant amount of money to do that. Because businesses in general, it's an outcome of capitalism, right? And every capitalist idea starts with taking some kind of a land grab, doing some kind of a how do we call it, like non-linear kind of models. So I truly believe that if the entrepreneur has the aspirations to do something very large, very significant, then they will need capital. Otherwise, they will need time, and there should be a good balance of scalability and a path to profitability at all times. Putting money or doing something that fundamentally will never scale. So I'll tell you my thinking on this. Visitors, the current landscape maybe, I would not be happy running an app that has only users and has no way to monetize, and has no way to. There are somebody who can do it really well, and somebody who would put in so much money in that also. And Facebook is a great example. And there's so many of them which didn't monetize till they reached a certain. I don't get that, but I definitely do get the fact that, hey, if we have to invest an X amount of money and there's already some revenue coming in, and the model is fixed, then why not? And that's what I also did, because we raised money when we had found a product market fit, when we reached a certain number and we knew that these key parameters of a business are in shape. Now let's just pour gas on the fuel on fire, as we call it, maybe. So that's what my intent, my thinking is.
So when you were in the process of raising money, was that stressful? How long did it take? What is your? I mean, how did that play out for you?
Yeah, bro, raising money is always stressful. No matter at what stage, no matter at what scale you are, raising capital is stressful to have, but stress lagna nahi chahiye. Agar if you think that's very stressful, it might get to you also because it's a long process, man. It's like it keeps going on and on and on. It's a long process. But it should not be stressful because you should focus on the business. Once you start focusing on the business, I think everything kind of plays out. And building a business for investors is never the right way to do it. I mean, investors will give you just the money, and they will expect you to return that money with a multiple, right? And that's how it all pans out. So you have to, it's a part of what your life, and you have to look at it like that. It's a part of your professional business life. And I mean, that's about it. You cannot be too stressful about it because then it will get to you.
So do you? Maybe this is not the. I don't know if it's the right place, but I think I'll ask it anyway. Do you regret raising capital, or do you think you would have been able to be successful without capital, or the capital came in at the right time with the right set of people, or you're like, you know what, maybe I could have waited another year. Or so yesterday I was talking to somebody who's right now very successful as a about 150 crore company right now, valued. I think it's going to be one of the unicorns very soon. The person said, "Hey, I think I raised capital a little too early. I diluted a little too early, right?" So, do you think you diluted early? You think you should have waited? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are quite simple. I don't think about it because if you think about it, then it's all in the past. It's all happened. But I know one thing: I'm working with great people, a great set of investors, and to me, that is more liberating than anything else. I would be more unhappy if I had raised later maybe, but I was not working with the right set of people, right? You want these people basically to believe in you, right? To believe in your vision, right? And sometimes when some very difficult decisions are to be made, or a company is in a difficult spot, then they should be able to support you, and they should be able to have the same conviction they had when you were on a upwards. So I think it's just about that. It's just about people there who believe in it and who want to have a long-term view on working with the promoters and the founders.
So my last question to you, Bharat, would be: what advice would you want to give somebody who's about to start a new business?
I think one advice that I can give right away is spend more time before starting the business than after starting the business. Because once you start, I mean, there's a monthly expense, and I mean, it's easier to, kind of make mistakes early on rather than after starting and after spending amounts of money. Be lean. I think that's very important early on. Do things that don't scale. Do things that you want to do that will make you happy as an individual, not because some market की हवा कहीं चल रही है या फिर किसी ने सिर्फ सुना था. Because entrepreneurship is, I mean, technically you are going against the odds, and the odds are not in your favor. You are going, I mean, technically you are getting into something like, if you try to go to maybe Harvard, if you have better chances. It's like if you want if you want to make something very very significant. So अगर धंधा ही करना है, बिजनेस ही करना है, तो वो तो चलो ठीक है. अगर एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप करनी है, इनोवेशन करनी है, मार्केट तोड़नी है, कुछ बहुत बड़ा, you need a very different mindset, very different approach. So I think, yeah, be lean, be capital efficient initially, especially, and थोड़ा long term horizon होना चाहिए. At least 3 years. If you don't have a 3-year horizon, and if you don't have money for 3 years, like that's also very, very important. Especially people who are married and maybe have kids and a family or whatever, right? They have the parents whom they support, or कुछ भी हो सकता है. They should, proceed with caution. I mean, they should not just jump into it thinking that's glamorous today, because I mean, it's difficult.
Of course. No, so today the startup community is completely enamored by a few successes, thinking that that's how it plays out. The other day I was at a college and I was talking to the graduating batch, And after lecture conversation, I asked people, hey, what do you think a startup is? One guy said, oh, a company that raises money. I'm like, that is not what a startup is, right? So there's so much glamour that they put around raising money. There's so much glamour that they put about startups, that they don't see the hard work that goes behind it. They don't see the blood, sweat, and tears that go behind it, right? So, like, one piece of advice that I gave somebody who's now a very, very successful entrepreneur was like, if you are not dead passionate about that thing, then you would be stupid to start it, because the amount of hard work, the amount of heartbreak you're going to go through doing it for something you're not passionate about would be absolutely craziness, right? You will not be able to sustain it. But if you are truly passionate about it, if you are willing to withstand the pain that it's going to give you, because guess what? No matter the kind of company you're starting, there is going to be pain. So your tolerance for pain is going to, determine how successful you become, right? So, Bharat, thank you so much for taking up the time and being on this show. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing about failures. Thank you so much for sharing about the culture and some of the other things that you spoke about. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Ashwin. I had a wonderful time. I learned so many things from you today, and it's been fantastic speaking to you.
Same here. So, guys, that was Bharat Sethi from Rage Coffee. I think he's created a rage in the industry, that he's gotten into. He's created a very unique product for the Gen Z audience, and now obviously growing to other people. But imagine creating a coffee product for Gen Z. Who would have thought, Gen Z would be attracted to that? But he understood what they wanted, and he created something, and that's what I think was one of his secrets of success. So do check him out on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and check out their website. I think there are some amazing products and some amazing flavors. And please, I hope if you have spent time till here, if you spend the last 30-35 minutes till here, I'm hoping you've learned something new, and I want you to take that one learning and go and break some more ceilings. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.